right, so this makes drop pod number 2 for the month. We're making Tengu drop history, Joe.
Nice.
2 in the same month. But before we get to that, a little bit of a channel. Let's get some channel things out of the way. So first off, if you're watching this on release, unfortunately, you have not discovered time travel. We are indeed releasing this on Saturday, and there will not be a video on Sunday or any Sunday in the future, but more on that will be explained in next week's The Munch, so be sure to check that out. So with that said, let us get to the drop pod, which this episode we are talking about something we sort of touched upon in our last episode, which is gameplay mechanics and whether or not they're good, if it's good, if it changes or not. Now, I think that the easy answer here is obviously it's all conditional. You know, every game can either benefit or be detracted from.
Yeah, because we're talking about franchises which kind of change like the way they play, or maybe change like genre slightly.
Yeah,
like maybe with like a sequel or something like that. And it seems to like the reason we're talking about it now is because, you know, we saw quite a bit of this at E3, so it's kind of like pretty appropriate to like talk about it.
Yeah, so for the sake of conversation, we're just gonna assume the general consent or the general idea of, you know, games changing, because, you know, I feel like the whole uprising of like people really being against change is sort of a newer thing in the gaming industry if you think about it, because I feel like classic gaming, like back in the NES, SNES days, you got a lot of the same, you know, from like the Mega Man franchise. Was
that
like
makes sense. Yeah,
it had the same core mechanics, kind of changed it up with every game, but still same basic mechanics. Even classical Mario was like that, you know, Super Mario Brothers.
Yeah,
even to Super Mario World, they introduced like Yoshi and other things, but the same core mechanics existed.
Yeah, you still put it in the same genre as like a platforming game, wouldn't you? It's like,
yeah, and even like Sonic, you know, same deal. I think it wasn't until like maybe we hit like the N64 era, the PlayStation era, where we started introducing like 3D into the landscape that things really started changing, you know.
Yeah, at that point, games didn't really have much of a choice, you know. They had to kind of advance with the technology, and a lot of that was to go into 3D. So you saw like a lot of kind of, I mean, some games kind of tried to retain that same kind of genre, you know what I mean? Like Sonic, for example, it was like obviously the game had spin-offs and things like that, but, you know, even when it got to the Dreamcast, Sonic Adventure was like a bit of a departure, and like it had like a bit of like a open world kind of feel to it, and you had to kind of go from level to level.
Yeah, it's interesting that you actually bring up Sonic, because I would say that comparatively, I would say that Sonic's switch from the 2D platforming mechanic to the 3D platforming mechanic / adventure mechanic that they went with eventually was way more awkward and like not so successful as compared to like Mario's departure from 2D platforming to 3D platforming / adventure style games, you know.
Right.
I feel like for whatever reason, maybe it's just, you know, obviously more talented programmers and designers, but I feel like the transition from Mario from 2D to 3D was way more smooth than Sonic.
Yeah, that was a lot better. I mean, like Mario 64 is like a classic game. You don't really consider any Sonic game a classic game. Yeah. I mean, I personally loved Sonic Adventure. I really enjoyed that game. It'll always be a game that kind of stands out to me as being like a great game at the time it came out, but you don't really put it in the same class as like Mario 64, you know what I mean? So yeah, I can understand that.
In fact, I would argue that anytime that Sonic has done a 3D game, it's always been like a blemish on the legacy that is Sonic, you know?
Yeah, man. It's so horrible to say, but because I was a big Sonic fan growing up, you know, I was like a Mega Drive, you know, I had all the consoles really, but the Sega Saturn Sonic stuff was kind of what kind of, I guess, people kind of realized Sonic was not going to be as good when it got to 3D just from what was on that, I feel like. But
yeah, it's definitely weird to like see two characters come from different, you know, like the mascots of their consoles, and just see they took the same sort of pathway, but they diverged at a very interesting point in the advancement of technology. So
but if it's not, you know, it's kind of a weird thing now, because it's not like Sonic can only make bad games now. You know, there's been a couple of good Sonic games since, But a lot of them incorporate that kind of like side-scrolling, like
Exactly, yeah.
classic platforming that everyone loved back in the day. It's kind of just like accommodating the guys like the retro crowd.
Yeah.
Because even if you look at the numbers, you had Sonic 1, 2, and like just the numbered titles, Sonic 4, which was kind of weird because it was like a 2-chapter game.
It was episodic.
Yeah, that was weird. But that was like retro style, so old school Sonic, And I don't think they've made a Sonic 5 yet, so But I know what you're saying. It definitely appears like that. But not only just talking about games that kind of jump from like the retro era into like the 3D era with the PlayStation and then 64 and things like that. Some games are actually on those consoles, and even today we're seeing different genres, even when games actually started in 3D. So it's definitely adapting even into like the newer age consoles now.
Yeah. You touched on an interesting point there. Like, so in order for Sonic to sort of get goodwill back with the fan base, they kind of had to go back to that nostalgic thing. And I feel like another company that does that a lot is Capcom,
Right.
And I don't want to get into the newer stuff yet, but so I feel like Capcom is a very interesting subject in that with Resident Evil in particular, they'll always try new things, but then they'll realize, oh crap, we might have screwed up. So then they go back to the quote unquote old school Resident Evil, So it's like you get the Resident Evil 5 and 6s, which again we'll get to in a second here, but which diverge very significantly from the quote unquote classic style of Resident Evil from like Resident Evil 1 and 2. And then they'll bring out a newer title that goes back to that, or they'll remake an older title to get back the nostalgic side of the fan base.
I feel like a lot of kind of like the Resident Evil titles, not just them, but a lot of these decisions, aren't purely just based on let's we want to make the best sequel possible. We feel like this is the right direction. To me, it kind of feels like a lot of this is just kind of based on trends. A lot of people like this type of game, so we need to make this series, which is beloved for a completely different reason, into this kind of genre, and I feel like that hurts a lot of games.
Yeah. So while we're on the subject, let's talk about Resident Evil then. So I think Resident Evil is probably the biggest or most notable.
Definitely has a lot of changes going on in through the franchise,
So the
which
thing
isn't
is,
always bad.
No, definitely. I feel like by the time we hit Resident Evil 4, it was time for change, and I felt that the direction that they went was interesting. Resident Evil 4 was great, don't get me wrong, but it was obviously a change because by that time, Resident Evil 3 not only was the whole concept of the fixed camera, tank control style sort of outdated at this point, or it was overdone, so to speak, because, you also had like Silent Hill. But, at that point, it was just time for change, and I could respect that. Yeah. But, obviously, with Resident Evil in particular, from Resident Evil 4 to 5 to 6, they constantly went in a complete different direction from the original Resident Evil. Oh, yeah. And, there's a lot of people who argue that, they didn't really change much because, sure, in the original Resident Evil, you were fighting a lot of stupid things like giant crocodiles and snakes and spiders. But, at its core, it was survival horror. Like, you didn't have a lot of ammo, fixed camera angles, very, I would say, maybe atmospheric in a sense. And the newer titles were more situational horror. I don't know.
Resident Evil 4 was definitely a great game.
Yeah.
One of the best Resident Evils made.
Yeah.
But to me, it kind of felt like Resident Evil 4 was, how do I word it? It's like more of like a third-person shooter than the old school Resident Evil games was, and it did take a lot of people by surprise. It took me by surprise at the time. It took me a little while to get used to it. I thought, man, this ain't Resident Evil. You know what I mean? What the fuck am I playing here? I'm just, the camera angle is not the same. God damn it, You've
got QTEs. What's a Shenmue?
Yeah, right. And but once you get past that, I think a lot of people kind of understood what it was trying to do.
Yeah.
And kind of appreciated it. And it was still a really great game. Yeah. And it still is a really great game. But the sequels, moving on from Resident Evil 4, people can probably say that Resident Evil 5 and 6 was even different from Resident Evil 4. What would you say?
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting thing. I remember Resident Evil 5, reading about it, and it being like, you know, all the previews were like, oh, these zombies are like out in the daylight. So I thought what they were gonna do was I was excited for the concept of horror in the day, you know.
Right.
But what we eventually got was more like action game shooting infected guys in the daytime. You know, it wasn't what I expected. And Resident Evil 6 just
that ramped up what Resident Evil 5 was to a different level, man. I remember I played through Resident Evil 5, and you know, it was good. It was good, but it was a lot of, you know, the survival horror wasn't really there, I'd say.
Yeah.
Resident Evil 6, man, I remember playing through that, and I was thinking, I just remember like some dude on a cross bike going across rooftops. I'm just like playing this, and I'm like, what the fuck has happened to this franchise?
Remember when you got chased by a tank?
Yeah, I just remember. Oh my god, dude, I remember it all.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, something's got to change after this. This cannot be Resident Evil. Are they just making this because a lot of people like action games right now? Like, are trying to jump on like a Call of Duty kind of like game? Like, I didn't understand it.
Yeah, I think you touched on it earlier when you said, you know, Resident Evil was very much, their products are of that time. You know, when Resident Evil 4 came out, like action games were really picking up, and you know, having these like sort of fast-paced shooters was sort of the deal, you know.
Yes.
And when we get to Resident Evil 6, that was a time where like it was the Michael Bay era, so to speak, you know, where everything had to explode, everything was just crazy, shaky cam everywhere and ridiculousness. But so I think Resident Evil 6 was their peak, and I think even Capcom realized, okay, we might have went a little too far there. Let's pull it back a bit. So, you know, but before we get there, let's talk about a little bit about other games. So, like, other games, at least in my history, I would say that, you know, a very notable one was the Fallout series. You know, Fallout 1 and 2 were isometric RPGs, you know, all about just, you know, click in. And that's where the whole VAT system came from, because that was the turn-based combat style. But, you know, when Bethesda picked it up, it became a first-person shooter with RPG elements. And, you know, even Elder Scrolls has followed suit with Fallout in the sense that it's gone from very RPG-based games to more, like, action games with RPG elements, you know. And I would say that even extends to games like Mass Effect. You know, I feel like the first Mass Effect was very RPG based and very tactical based, and then they decided, okay, a lot of this seems like not what our fan base wants, so they switched to a third-person shooter game with some RPG elements, you know, which is, I feel like maybe that's why I didn't really connect with Mass Effect after Mass Effect 2 was done.
Yeah, Mass Effect is definitely a weird one, because even though, you know, it's all third person, you know what I mean? You can play them all. Like, I played them all back to back. Yeah. And I just remember thinking, man, the first one is harder than 2 and 3, like, because I kind of jumped from one to the other. But, you know, obviously as they went on, they did get more kind of action focused. Yeah. The first one definitely had more kind of like RPG elements to it. And it's kind of weird in retrospect, because at the time it kind of felt like a natural progression, like when I played them all back to back, like 1, 2, and 3. But when I look back now, you know, I can actually see the parts where they've kind of changed it, and like, they kind of did make it more actiony, in line with a lot of games around that time.
Yeah, definitely. Like, again, I think a lot of this is, again, response to, you know, the waves of trends.
Yeah, you touched on a couple, but, you know, one of my biggest ones, and I think you would agree, is Dead Space 3. Like, holy fuck. Like, we played through Dead Space 3. It's actually up on the channel if you want to go back to a couple of years and watch it. Yeah. But it's like, I love Dead Space 1, man. I really enjoyed it. And I actually enjoyed Dead Space 2 from what I can remember. Yeah. But Dead Space 3, man, was totally different. This was a game that, like, did what Resident Evil 6 did, and just made it all action. Like, it completely lost its horror roots, I felt. Yeah.
And the sad thing with Dead Space 3 too is they had a really, really good gimmick in the sense that when you played with co-op, one of the characters freaking out and the other character has no idea what's going on. That was my favorite thing about Dead Space 3, but it was so segmented and such not a focus of the game that it was frustrating.
it's kind of weird to talk about a game like Dead Space because people might be listening to this and thinking, oh, but it's like exactly the same. Yeah, it's third person. You know what I mean? The way it controls didn't really change too much, I guess. But, you know, it like, I didn't class it as like a natural progression for the series, you know? It completely lost what made the originals great. And I think that's what we're trying to get at, you know? It wasn't, you know, it's not about games that changed, you know, gameplay mechanics or did things differently for the sequels, maybe just to kind of like progress the way the game, but still built on the same foundations. These are games to me which completely just kind of neglected the foundations they were built on and went in like a completely different direction.
Yeah. Like, you had to craft your weapons in Dead Space 3, and that thing was built around microtransactions. So we pretty much played with the base weapons because we couldn't afford any of the other weapons.
Yeah, it was so weird. Like, you know, crafting weapons could have been a good way to progress the series. You know what I mean? Like a horror game, you know, you got to craft what you find. But it was done in such a way just to benefit kind of like the action side of the game. You know what I mean? Like, and it costs you real money. Yeah, that's a different topic for another day. But yeah, that was annoying.
Yeah. So I mean, other games on my list, I mentioned it. You know, in the other episode, God of War. I'm really happy to see God of War making a change because I feel like, much like Resident Evil, by the time it got to God of War 3, I felt like they've done all they could with that series.
But this is a game you're actually happy to see change.
Yeah. So this is obviously a different approach to it, but yeah, I'm happy to see. This is one example of why I enjoy when developers take a risk, you know.
Yeah.
And I guess this is a nice transition back into Resident Evil. So, you know, obviously Resident Evil is taking a different approach. It's going to be a first-person game. Yeah. It's going to be, I guess, maybe less action-oriented, more horror-oriented. It's hard because Capcom's messaging is all over the place right now.
Yeah, it's kind of confusing.
Yeah, I would say that, again, you know, with such an elaborate change for that franchise over the years, I think not only is it time, but I'm excited, you know, to see where they go with it.
I'd say I'm excited as well. I've kind of seen mixed reactions on this. Like some people saying, oh, it's Resident Evil, you know, this isn't Resident Evil spin-off 96. This is Resident Evil 7, you know what I mean? This is like a numbered game in the main franchise, and now it's first person. Right, Resident Evil has never been first person unless you played one of the spin-off games. But it's like, I'm actually open to it, you know? Because after Resident Evil 6, I would literally take anything that is more centered on going back to its horror roots. And the way they set up the game sounds interesting. You know, it kind of sounds like it's based in kind of like another big mansion, like Resident Evil 1 maybe. Apparently there is going to be combat in it, even though there's none in the demo. It's slightly confusing the way Capcom...
Technically there is, I think.
Right,
with the whole axe.
I've heard like a couple of things. But... you know, apparently it's going to actually have like herbs and stuff, so there is going to be kind of like full combat, and this is a big change. Like, you know, going first person. I feel like if it doesn't do well, I mean, I'm not going to say that. I'm actually interested to see how well it does. Like, hopefully, I'm hoping it's a good game.
Yeah, I mean that was the interesting thing I was going to get to is like the reactions to Resident Evil 7 have been like, this is not Resident Evil. Like this is just something that they slapped the Resident Evil name on. That could very well be the truth, but I feel like at this point, what do they have to lose? Like, what do you want them to make more Resident Evil 6?
Yeah.
Do you really want them to go back to Resident Evil 1? I feel like Resident Evil 1, obviously that style still exists, like Until Dawn was in that style, you know, fixed camera angles, tanky controls, you know. It's obvious that that game can still exist, but can it exist in an action, you know, sort of mixture with this kind of climate in, you know, the way that industry is going, you know?
Yeah.
I feel like the fixed camera angles, the whole adventure style that was the Resident Evil 1, 2, 3 series lends itself more to a narrative-based sort of adventure game that Until Dawn is, you know? If you want something that scares you, or, you know, something with some action to it, like the Resident Evil series is known for, I think you kind of have to move with the times and be like, okay, well, we have to take a different approach to it that's still modern, that, you know, anyone can pick up and play. And I feel like this is the best sort of compromise that you can get. You know, it's not only is it new, but it's a throwback to things that apparently fans have wanted. And, you know, I don't know. It's just, I feel like people who are just immediately on this and being like, this is not Resident Evil. I'm just like, first off, you don't know what this is. This is a teaser. It tells you literally nothing about the game. And second off, you know, give it a shot. You know, give it a chance. Don't be so cynical. I feel like, you know, this is long overdue. So let's not cut it off at its knees before we know anything, you know. But I will say, I can understand people's apprehension, because at the end of the day, this is still Capcom. And Capcom has a history, even now with the whole promotion of Resident Evil 7. Capcom has had a history of finding ways to just disappoint their fan base, like going back all the way to Street Fighter Cross Tekken, you know, being so devious with the on this DLC, and even with that same fan base screwing them completely over with Street Fighter 5, you know. So Capcom has a history of just being very bad with their fan base. So it's very, very possible that Resident Evil 7 is going to be a bad game. But I feel like this change should not be the thing that people are angry about, you know?
Yeah, and what I was going to say is like, you know, even touching on the Capcom point, but you've also, like, they've kind of like, you know, there's been a lot of questionable decisions Capcom have made in the past. But you've got to remember, this game, it's Resident Evil 7, so you know there's going to be some money put behind this. And I can't remember the last time that a game that's not been like an indie game or something like that is kind of like promised to be like full-on horror, first person, you know. I can't think of another game that's had like probably this much money like put behind it. You know, this is probably going to be, I'm hoping it's going to be like really, really good. You know, a lot of care and time goes into it, and I'm just interested to see what comes out of it. It could go either way at this point for me, but I'm hoping for the best.
I wanted to bring this up. I don't have no idea where I was going to put it in, but to a certain extent, I enjoy when games take a risk and do something new, you know, especially if there have been a established franchise that has built itself around certain core mechanics. I like when, you know, they try something new. But obviously there are games that I play or have played that, you know, I'm not really annoyed or any concern, you know, that they don't really change it up. Like, a lot of people give flack to Pokemon for quote-unquote not changing the mechanics. Although I would argue, as someone who plays the games, that they do change them up. Obviously, the very core never changes. Like, you know, it's a turn-based RPG. You know, that's what its foundation has always been for the core game. But, you know, there is enough changed with every generation, if you will, that I feel like as a player, they change, you know, enough to make it worthwhile. This sort of extends to the Quake reboot that they're coming up with. I feel like as much as I want them to modernize it to a certain extent, I really, really hope that they keep it to the same core mechanics that made Quake, you know? The same reason that people hold Doom in such high regard. I hope they have that same kind of respect, you know, for the original titles. And so it's, I don't know, I feel conflicted. Like, am I somewhat of a hypocrite for thinking that way? You know, like, I enjoy when games do something new, but I also enjoy when games don't do anything new. Like, I get, like, you know, there are a whole bunch of Mega Man clones. I still enjoy the whole concept of Mega Man, you know, running through a 2D level that's really difficult, getting to a boss, beating that boss, getting their power. You know, that's a pretty cool concept that I would play in so many iterations of whatever, you know. But
it's like people these days, people want new kind of side-scrolling Mario games because you know, Nintendo don't really make them. But it's just stuff like that, you know. Like, I think it's all subjective, you know. Like, if you take a risk and it's actually good, then cool. But I think there's always going to be those people who just want the old school. But how do you do that, you know? Because a lot of stuff does change. I think Doom did it really well. You know, the latest Doom. That was pretty much old school Doom, but just completely, like, you know, the foundations were made the same. You know what I mean? Like we said like earlier. But there's one of the games I wanted to bring up was like Tomb Raider. Just like even the reboot of Tomb Raider I would say would well, I guess you could say the original Tomb Raider series, like that kind of went in a little bit of a weird direction as it went on. Again, I think they just tried to adapt and kind of lost what made it great. You know, it kind of, when you played the first couple of games, it was all about like exploration, puzzles, and then you had games like Angel of Darkness, and like, you know, it got a bit weird from that point.
Dark Clara.
Yeah, and then they rebooted it, and I've got to say, I enjoyed the reboot. Like, I played through the whole game, and I really enjoyed it. But again, it was kind of missing some bits and pieces of like what made the original Tomb Raider great. And then I played the latest Tomb Raider, and I was kind of hoping that they would kind of like have more focus on like exploration, more focus on like the puzzles and like the tombs. But I think it's safe to say that that aspect of Tomb Raider is just completely gone at this point.
Yeah.
Like, they're just not doing that. It's like just an action game now.
Yeah. I would say that I honestly wasn't really a fan of the Tomb Raider reboot. Mostly because, my favorite part of Tomb Raider were the puzzles, you know, figuring out how to scale this giant tomb with like sticks poking out of the sides and the levers everywhere, and like, okay, how do I approach this? You know, that was my favorite thing about Tomb Raider. I spent literally hours in the damn mansion, just exploring it, jumping all over, trying to find secrets. Yeah, it was crazy. I think at one point I was playing the mansion more than the actual game itself. So.
Yeah, definitely. Just trying to find all the secrets in there and locking the butler in the freezer. Just definitely. All that good stuff.
You hear that rattling, you're like, damn it, how did you get out? But that's the thing. Like, so like in the reboot, it spent so much time trying to make me feel sorry for Lara, trying to, you know, I understand, you know, maybe it's a different audience trying to make her this action character, filling the damn early game with so many damn QTEs that it annoyed the hell out of me. And I kept sitting there waiting, like, okay, when do I explore tombs? When do the tombs come? And I felt like I never got that satisfaction. I'm just like, okay, well, I guess my time with Tomb Raider has gone and passed, you know, come and pass. All right, so let's put all the past things aside and let's look to the future. So at E3, it was announced that Crash Bandicoot is making a return. And technically a return. It's being remade. The original 3 games are being remade from the ground up. So we're getting, you know, basically a remaster or a remake of the first 3 games. Now, let's assume that this does really well and this encourages Activision to take another chance on Crash Bandicoot. So which direction do they go? Do they stick to the core mechanics that made Crash Bandicoot what it is, or do they take it like a spiral route where they just build a new franchise on it with completely new mechanics and new everything, basically? Like, maybe what if they make Crash Bandicoot into a 3D action or exploration adventure game, you know?
They might pull a Banjo because doing nuts and bolts on it. Who knows?
Yeah, like you gotta craft your crash machine.
I'll be interested to see what a new Crash game plays like, because I don't think you could get away with just doing what the old Crash games did.
Exactly.
You know?
That's what I was gonna say. Like, because the Crash, when you look at it, the reason that I think Crash is so beloved in this day and age is because when it came out, no other game was really doing what Crash was doing, which was like, you know, the whole in and out, like, basically it was like the building stepping stones for like the third person adventure action game, you know, where you're going in and out versus left and right. So in this day and age, that is a very dated mechanic, but that does beg the question, like, could Crash exist in the modern world when it's outside its nostalgia goggles, you know?
Yeah, I hope so, dude. I hope so. I'm actually looking forward to the reboot, so I guess we'll see how those play out, but I'd be excited to see what kind of stuff to do with Crash. I imagine it would go into like a full-on, like, I don't know, I can't even imagine. I guess, well, you know, they've been platforming games recently which have been really good, like the, you know, Donkey Kong franchise. Tropical Freeze was really good and things like that. So, you know, it's not out of the question that it can make really good, like, platforming games based on like old characters. So I just kind of hope for something like that, but I couldn't specifically say I'd change it up to make it better.
Yeah. because I am conflicted. I'm like, in some sense, what made Crash interesting was like it was small levels. You know, you started at the hub world, you branched out to these other thematic levels, and you know, it was like, you know, it was the levels. Sometimes you went to side scrolling, but mostly it was the 3D space of moving. You know, I think that could work in like sort of a more open adventure style. But I feel like some of the charm is lost because, you know, how do you make that thematic unless, you know, you're warping all over the place. But it's weird. Like, I feel so conflicted as a fan. Like,
it'd probably be something like Ratchet and Clank, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
Kind of just like a, you know, big world like that. Maybe it is, but I don't know. Would it be Crash without warping to places? I don't even know.
Yeah, that has been such a central part.
Yeah.
Of Crash's.
It could probably still do it. It could probably still do it. Just bigger levels, maybe. Who knows, man?
Yeah, I guess so. Maybe you go through like the frozen world, and then you go to the tropical world.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Maybe you can do them in any order.
Yeah, I guess so.
Who knows?
So I guess
hold on a second.
Oh,
there's actually a couple of games I do want to call out for kind of being shitty when it didn't have to be. Well, not shitty, but you can remember the game Syndicate, and I'd rebooted that into like a first-person game.
Right. Yeah.
I don't need to mention Syndicate. I actually pre-ordered Syndicate. All right, the new one, the FPS. Right, I pre-ordered it. I thought, man, this game looks awesome. Syndicate, it's back.
Yeah.
And it was like a first-person game, and I played the game, and it was like the most generic first-person shooter I've ever played.
Didn't you also get like the old Syndicate games if you bought it too, or something like that?
I don't even know, because I bought it on console, so I don't know.
Okay, never mind.
Yeah, I bought it on the 360, so I just got the first person game, and that was interesting. Burnout Paradise, all right. Now, Burnout Paradise is actually a really, really good game,
right?
But this went in a different approach, because I went into like the open world approach, which is actually like.
Didn't they take the crash mode or whatever out of Burnout Paradise?
That was my biggest gripe. That was like the best thing about it. That was what made like Burnout, in my opinion. I love that mode, and it wasn't even in Paradise. What the fuck were they thinking? I know we've not really seen much of it since. You know, that's what bothers me. You know what I mean? Bring back the crash mode, guys. What is going on? And finally, one last game I want to call out.
All right.
Orcs Must Die Unchained. What the fuck were you thinking, Orcs Must Die? Like, seriously?
Well, I don't know.
I know what you're gonna say. We don't see eye to eye on this. Like, the gameplay is exclusively the same. All right.
Yeah.
It's the same exact stuff, same exact kind of system. But the one thing I don't like about it is that it kind of went the way of what many games have done lately, and kind of gone into the system where it's like pay to win. Like, have you tried? Like,
the crafting bit.
Yeah, I tried playing Orcs Must Die. We couldn't play it together. We couldn't play it together because they've got some shitty system in place where like
it's region locked. Yeah,
it's region locked. Yeah. So me and Keaton can't play together.
Yeah.
But I played a little bit of it solo, like before we played together, and a little bit after. Yeah. And man, it is a grind in that game to get good shit. And it's just stuff like that where I'm just like, you know, couldn't we just got on Orcs Must Die free or something where we could just play together? And you know, I don't know, man. Yeah,
no, I see where you're coming from, but A, the game is going to be free to play, which, you know, so they have to have some kind of way to make money. But B, I don't know, it was, I understand, like, your gripe with it, because it turns into a crafting system where, like, you need to grind for materials. But in a sense, it's still sort of the same thing with Orcs Must Die 2, because in Orcs Must Die 2, you had to buy things with skulls, which you had to grind levels for. So it is sort of the same thing, but yeah, it's definitely more difficult because you're relying on like RNG, and like, you know, if you really want this trap and you're not getting drops, and you got to buy, you know, materials. Yeah. So yeah, I definitely see where you're coming from, but I feel like if they're going to go free to play, I guess that's really the only, other than maybe adding cosmetic skins, which they're probably already doing, you know, there's really no other way to make money. So
yeah, that is true. You know, I can completely appreciate that and stuff like that. But it was just, I'm not angry. I'm just kind of like, I'm kind of sad. Yeah, I am disappointed. I'm just sad because I love the first games, dude. I love Orcs Must Die. We played a lot of Orcs Must Die too. Yeah. And like, we can't even play this one together. You know what I mean? That's what I'm sad about. I guess if they took off the region lock stuff, maybe I'd get more chance to play it and form a different opinion. But yeah.
maybe the grind isn't so bad when you're playing with friends, as long as you're in the same region.
Yeah, maybe. Who knows? You can say for sure. Like, who knows?
Yeah. So, unless you've got any more other games you want to call out, should we call it?
No, I think that's my list, to be honest.
All right. So, maybe let's leave it on a positive note. Good on some of the devs for trying new things. It's always a great thing. It doesn't always work out, but I think as a gamer who has been playing a lot of games for a lot of years, I appreciate when people try something new.
Well, we wouldn't have like Grand Theft Auto the way it is now if they didn't change it up.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like, change is not always bad. Change is not always good. But again, as we said at the start, it's always subjective. It's always conditional.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I guess, difference of opinion will matter. So be sure to leave your opinion in the comments. Let us know your favorite changes to franchises that you've played. What are franchises that you've sort of been discouraged from continuing playing because you didn't like the way that the direction they went?
Yeah.
Let's try to leave the offshoot games, out of it, because we could have gone into like death by degrees for Tekken if we wanted to, but
yeah.
Let's not go down that rabbit hole just yet. So let's just leave it to franchise. But anyway, be sure to leave your thoughts and comments and arguments, I guess, if you want, in the comments.
Disagree with us.
Are you angry too? Do you want to play? You want to play with your friends in Orcs Must Die, but you two have been locked by the regions?
It's a whole different thing. That should be a thing for every game. Come on.
Hashtag
no region locks.
No region locks
on anything ever again, please. Yeah. Anything.
But yes, so thank you for listening. Hope you guys enjoyed us doing 2 drop pods in the same month. Such a rarity. It's like seeing a unicorn.
Yeah, it's the E3 time, man. A lot to talk about.
Video games. Anyway, yes, thank you for listening, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye.
See you later, guys.